mean, there's always a relationship between art objects and performance. Every art object represents the performance of it being made. And it's just a matter of how explicit you want to incorporate the performative aspect of creating the piece in the finished piece itself. Immanuel Kant, his ideas on art and beauty are that art and beauty compel us to be social, that when we see something beautiful, we want to turn to the person next to us and say, that's beautiful, isn't it? And get confirmation and have discussion about it. So the project I'm currently working on is a series of pieces based on, well, inspired by the Wedgwood anti-slavery medallion, which was made by Josiah Wedgwood around the 1780s for the Anti-Slavery Society. He actually gave a bunch of them to Ben Franklin, who was, I believe, the president of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society. So that's how they some of them ended up in the United States. Working on a few different pieces based on this. One is just a more contemporary version of that medallion, kind of inspired by the events that have led to the formation of Black Lives Matter. What do we want is a large collection of plates done in the Wedgwood style, asking the question, what do we want on the plates, with a raised fist in the middle of the plate, and then decorated in the Wedgwood style, but with imagery representing possible answers to the question of what do we want. I think the popularity of including public participation in art projects comes from a couple different places. One is wanting ways to represent the social by actually incorporating the social. But another is to kind of criticize the idea that the artist has special knowledge that the audience or the viewer does not. And to bring people into the art itself as a way of collectively forming knowledge.
It's very important and can be very liberating as a form of self-expression, particularly like with gender identity, that you see femininity expressed very clearly through clothing and kind of also being like an excess of clothing and stylization and of the body. And so then the grotesque also becomes a lot of body, like a lot of flesh, and whether or not it's exposed flesh, just being very conscious of the body and of bodies overlapping in society and there not really being space between them, and that they're always kind of being this melee of kind of bodies in a space. And that is like a frightening thing a lot of times, because it can feel excessive. So much of how we think of our body is that it is inherently excessive, because it's kind of this unruly extension of our mind that we can't control and that it's decaying. But at the same time, it's very liberatory to think about a body that you can fully inhabit. And so right now I'm working on a couple of different projects. I have one project where I'm working on scarves, so Indian square textiles that I'm embroidering with smallpox and other communicable diseases, and then I'm working on a project where I'm painting quoted images from different colonial era sources into kind of amalgams of people and fabrics that represent just quoted motifs from colonial trade, mostly around textiles. Looking back at some specific kinds of fabric or specific sources of fabric, so I was interested in muslin, which is a fine cotton fabric that Britain imported from India for a long time. Looked at silk. I'm from Georgia, and so Obviously, I grew up being very aware of cotton production and slavery in the South. And so I was interested in looking at cotton and then looking kind of at not necessarily parallels, but the shared histories that people endured just because of cotton.
The popular idea or conception of theater as, or acting as lying, I think has its use, but I do believe that theater is intended to be and can be and must be a form of truth. I'm influenced, I think, a lot by the work that I've done with John Ferguson, where just give space to people to play and feel comfortable and laugh together. Watch This Space is a story about activists fighting child trafficking set in the year 2146. It's an examination of a vision of the future, only through plot and relationship, but just through seeing how people occupy space together to represent that kind of delicate space between people, and working with really delicate, almost not there kinds of ideas in some improvisations, where people are almost doing nothing, and it can really be about, the focus of the audience can really clarify around just how they are.